It was exciting, but it was terrifying because I didn't know anything really about how like the writing staff of a TV show worked. You're in there with these people that have been doing it for years and they're very comfortable in the room, pitching jokes or story ideas. And I was kind of shy about speaking up, and I was kind of like, in my head a lot. And then, 7 years later, when I landed at the Simpsons, I got comfortable over the years in writers' rooms. But then when I got to the Simpsons, I kind of went right back to that mindset of, oh, these people are all geniuses and I'm an idiot. Like, because they were all like, it's an Ivy League staff. They were almost all Harvard graduates. I'm like the village idiot who went to community college for half a day.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. We have a great guest for episode 300. Mike has great stories, he's reflective, and his career is something that truly inspires me. I had a blast and took a lot out of this chat. It's pretty crazy hearing about Mike's story. At one point, he was a janitor and later becomes the showrunner of The Simpsons. You don't hear many stories quite like that. This chat was an absolute thrill for me. I also love chatting about The Simpsons. The show has had a massive impact on my writing and comedy, as well as my wider life. And also just a small thank you to all my listeners, guests, and everyone who's helped me reach 300 episodes. When I first started this podcast, I never thought I'd get past 10 episodes. And now being at 300 is really wild to me. And I'm very grateful to all of you who listen and help share the word of the podcast. It's much appreciated. Thank you so much. And here's to the next 300. Okay, let's get into it. Emmy, Peabody, and Writers Guild of America award-winning writer/producer Mike Scully has written many forms of comedy, animation, single cam, multicam, hidden cam, award show, and live performance. After 7 years of writing for shows you've never heard of, he joined The Simpsons writing staff as a producer in 1993. He was then promoted to showrunner in 1997 for seasons 9 through 12, and he co-wrote and co-produced The Simpsons Movie, which was released in 2007. He was also a consulting producer on the show until 2021, and recently wrote a new episode. Mike also served as the writer/producer on the Emmy-winning Everybody Loves Raymond, as well as Parks and Recreation. He's also a writer/producer on the critically acclaimed NBC series The Carmichael Show. He co-created with his wife, Julie Thatcher Scully, and Amy Poehler, the animated Fox/Hulu show Duncanville, starring Amy Poehler, Ty Burrell, and Rashida Jones, which ran 3 seasons. He also co-created some quickly cancelled shows such as The Pits, Complete Savages, and an animated version of Napoleon Dynamite. He and Julie also wrote the pilot for the ABC/Hulu show Shifting Gears. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, and we chat about The Simpsons and being a showrunner, leadership style and empowerment, moving to LA, his many odd jobs, cancelled shows and rejection, false promises, Everybody Loves Raymond, creating shows, art versus the business, doing comedy after Robin Williams, point of view, working on Parks and Recreation, moving forward, plus plenty more. Before we get into this epic chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny in Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out at 3:30 Melbourne, Australian time, with the full video of the podcast to be released the following day. Okay, cool. Thank you. Let's get into it. I know you did a lot of various different jobs before you got into writing, such as you worked in a clothing department, you're a janitor, you're a driving instructor. What were the best
Yeah.
and what were the worst?
The worst was the janitor. I was a janitor in a hospial.
Oh, okay.
It's
You'd see a
it's a
lot of
mess.
things.
It's a messy job.
Yep.
You never know quite what you're going to be cleaning up after, and you just got to get in there and do it. And like, or sometimes they're just handing you a trash bag, and there's like open needles sticking out of the like through the plastic.
And like, you'll be
And
fine.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, and yeah, and actually one time I was working like a weekend shift, like Saturday morning, and I had been out late the night before with my friends, and had a few drinks the night before, and went in to clean the operating room because they don't use them on the weekends, and
Oh,
then.
yeah.
So I opened the door up with my mop and bucket, and there's a full surgical team inside, and there's a patient, and the guy like the surgeon like looks up, like, and he's like looking like there's like a patient's legs in the air. All I could see is the doctor patient goes, "What are you doing in here?" And I said, "I didn't know anyone was using it. Get out, get out."
That, that's so great. I would imagine you've seen some horrible things, but it sort of reminds me, and we'll talk about The Simpsons in a second, where is it The Simpsons where they drop like a Smartie or something into someone's body while they're performing open surgery?
Oh shoot, that sounds
I'm putting you
familiar.
on the spot, but anyway, I was wondering if that was the story. When
Yeah, so
you,
that was the worst job, and the best one, probably the one I had the most fun at, was the teaching driving.
oh,
Was I mean, it was occasionally, nerve-wracking, but for the
I would
most
imagine.
part, it was a lot of fun because it was mainly you're teaching kids, and how to drive, and but most of them are excited. They were excited to learn, and the tough ones were like sometimes you would get somebody like more of like a elderly person, like like because back
Mm.
then it was very common, because this is like early 80s, late 70s. I was doing this, so it was kind of common that a lot of like women didn't learn to drive because
Oh,
the
yeah.
husbands always insisted on driving, and then suddenly the husband passes away and they have to learn how to drive at an age when they really don't want to learn it.
Yeah.
And the poor, what would normally take like a teenage kid 6 lessons, like to learn
Mm.
when you're that age, and you don't, and they're so nervous and everything. It was not uncommon to do 50, 60 lessons with the same person.
That's
Just
crazy.
yeah,
W-
and you can't help but feel bad for them because like they don't want to do this.
But they're
They're
forced
doing
to.
it, but they have to, So yeah, so that was, but it was still a fun job, and I had a lot of other like little fast food and you but it made it easier to make the decision to leave Massachusetts and come out here and give writing a try.
I can imagine. I want to hear about how you did it because it's really interesting to me. But I'm also imagining my auntie, she's 69 and she's learning to re-drive again after not driving for like 30 years. And I feel
Exactly.
so bad for that driving instructor. Like his kids are going to go to college with the amount of sessions that she's going to need because
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
God.
yeah.
And did you ever have people? I'm sure you would have had near crashes, but was there ever anyone? Because when kids are very excited, they might be waving at their friends and like rear off, or you're always on top of the. Do you ever have any of that?
Had one accident with a kid where we were approaching like a four-way like stops. There was a stop sign, and he just hit the gas pedal
Oh
instead of
no.
the brake. So we just kind of shot into the intersection and scraped part of a school bus that was going through the other way. But actually, the kids that really learned the fastest and drove the best were the ones that had been kind of stealing their parents' cars since they were like 12, 13 years old.
That's amazing. I know a few kids at our school that did that, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's
So
crazy.
by the time they were like the proper age to learn to drive, they were very experienced drivers. So
Did you ask them like, this is my first time, wink, wink?
yeah.
And the kid that got into an accident, are you allowed to fire students, or that was a learning moment and you nurtured with care?
Yeah, it was a learning moment for both of us, because I taught for like 2.5 years, and that was the only accident we had had. So it was like my boss came up to see it, and he had asked me when I called him. He said, "How much damage?" He didn't ask if I was okay or if the kid was okay. He immediately wanted to know how much damage to the car.
Oh my God.
And then I said, "Oh, it's not bad." And then he got there and he looked at the car, and his first words were to me, because that's not a little damage.
Meanwhile, you're in a cast and like a head brace, and you like can barely speak, and he's like, "That's going to come out of your allowance." That's crazy. And then another moment, which I've been thinking about for a while, at the age of 25, you're at a parking lot and you're drinking with friends and you have an epiphany. I'd love to know how this just came about and how your life changed in that moment.
Oh yeah, it was it was my 25th birthday, and we were just sitting in the parking lot of this Burger King restaurant and having a few drinks before we went to the bar to drink some more. Just drinking cheaply, and I just had we were listening to 8-track tapes, and I just kind of made this decision that the epiphany was, it is like, I'm not going to be doing this a year from now. Like when I turn 26, I'm going to be doing something with my life, because I just kind of saw myself falling into this, like, this is going to be the rest of my life if I don't make a move.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't know what it was. I had to kind of think, like, what do I want to try to do with my life? And I just kind of made a like list of things I didn't think, what could, it's like when people tell you to follow your passion, but you got to figure out what your passion is. Like, even my kids ask me, like one of my daughters once, she was just sitting at the kitchen table. It's like, "Dad, tell me what my passion is." So I kind of like figured, well, I love comedy, I love TV and movies, and I thought, well, why not? Like, give it a shot. And worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to Massachusetts, and but I feel like I had to go and try, and I had to try to fail at something. And
yeah, but that's still so. Like, that's crazy to me that you're with your friends, you're having fun, and then just something sparked within you, and you're like, I need to make a change. Had it been brewing before, or was it just you just had this realization you had to get out because you could see where your life was going?
Yeah, it was kind of like the previous years. I wasn't getting tired of it. I was having fun and stuff like that. But there was something about hitting 25, that number, that where I felt like I should like know what I want to do with my life by now, and I don't. And so I just decided to give myself a deadline to go try to make something happen. I knew the alternative. I knew, like, because back this, it wasn't, first of all, like, I didn't go to college. So I mean, I went for like a half a day to what we call like community college here, which is not really college. It's just like a bigger high school.
That's okay. Interesting way of putting a bigger high school. I like that.
Yeah. And so I wound up staying just like a half a day. Because if you quit in the first 24 hours, you get your money back.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, and I was paying. It was only like, it was like $150, but at the time,
Sure,
it was
it's
a lot of money to. Yeah, So, and my dad didn't want to invest in me, so
that's where great comedy comes from.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. So so And then like 6 months later, like in or even less than that, about 4 months later, January of '82, I drove cross country with a friend of mine, and he dropped me off in LA, and he went up to Lake Tahoe. He had a girlfriend up there, so he went up there, and
Oh wow.
I stayed down here, and just got like a date, got a regular job, and tried to figure out how to learn how to break into TV writing.
It's so inspiring to me as well. But also you probably did you have any friends or family there? It was just LA was the place to be. That's quite a courageous decision.
Well, that my brother Brian, who was also a writer, had come out before me, but he was still also kind of pursuing. We both had the idea at first of kind of trying to do stand up. So
Yeah.
we were doing like open mic, like amateur nights at clubs, and we both had like retail jobs, and we shared an apartment together.
That's
He,
nice.
he was already out here, but yeah, he had like a one, like he had this very tiny apartment. So I slept, we put a cot in the closet, and that's where I slept.
Oh wow. And okay, I've got so many questions, but will you do stand up and then you meet a Russian, I forgot his name, Yakov, someone Smirnov, and you
Yakov
start
Smirnoff, yeah.
what did he see in you where he wanted you to write for him? Because he was quite big at the time, wasn't he?
He was starting to, yeah, get bigger. He had done like commercials for like Miller Lite beers when, so he was just starting to pop a little like nationally. But I was recommended to him by another comic who had seen me doing like an open mic night,
Wow.
and I and what I didn't really have on stage, I didn't have like a character, like one voice. They were just kind of scattershot jokes about different things, but they didn't come from like one point of view because I hadn't learned that yet about comedians. And like the really great ones can learn what's a great joke, the difference between a great joke or a great joke for them.
Yeah.
And that I learned that from some comics. But yeah, a comic named Jimmy Brogan said he asked to see some of my jokes. So I had I put together a page of a bunch of jokes, and
Cool.
one of them happened to be a Russian, had a Russian joke. And he goes, I know a guy who would probably buy this joke from you.
Oh, just like that. Wow.
I
Like,
said,
gimme,
oh,
gimme, gimme,
okay.
gimme.
So I gave it, he showed it to him, and Yakov called me a couple days later and asked if I had any more Russian jokes. And I was like, oh yeah, I got tons of them. And then I just spent the whole weekend writing jokes, like, that had like a Russian angle to them, kind of comparing countries and that
Yep.
kind of stuff.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. And then I wound up working for him for a couple of years. I
Oh,
was
wow.
writing jokes for his act, and then he got a sitcom. He had a catchphrase that was "What a country!" It was always about his excitement about how much he loved America
Yeah.
compared to in Russia. And then he got a show called "What a Country," and so he helped me. He got the producers of that show to read my sample TV scripts because I had been writing those too, and because he liked the idea of having me on the staff because I knew his voice.
Hmm.
So and he said he would feel more comfortable, with somebody in the writer's room who knew his voice, knew
Yeah.
his act, and knew what he was comfortable with. So that's how I wound up getting the first job. But doing stand up, I recommend it to all aspiring writers,
Hmm.
particularly, I mean, comedy writers, because you do learn very quickly, like how to edit your material, how to like streamline your jokes to the fewest words, fewest syllables possible. Because what doesn't look long on a piece of paper, when you go up and say it in front of a crowd, it's suddenly like interminable for the audience. It's like get to the
It's
joke.
when I did it and I went, oh, this is so embarrassing because I knew I wasn't going to do it. I actually came with notes, which you can't do unless if it's like an open mic, you're like glancing. It was so embarrassing and I'm still scarred from it. But anyway, it was like writing an essay. And yes, it might be funny if you read it. And I learned very quickly. It'd be like, it was a long summer's day. It was the blue sky. And you just want to know it was a Saturday. You know, it gets straight to the point. And I realized so quickly. And also, I feel ridiculous telling you this. You're the master of this. But with my screenplays as well, I often have friends come over and to read my scripts and they'll pitch ideas. And, you know, they're very funny. But I'm like, that's not to the character. It doesn't fit the humor of the show. But that is a great joke. And I kind of had that advice earlier on, but yeah, it's just, thank God I had that stand-up experience because I probably learned it there painfully, but thank God I hopefully have.
Oh yeah. And it was like also one of my, I know the theme of the podcast is failures, but it was the night I made the decision to pursue writing as opposed to stand-up. I was doing an open mic night, and a lot of times you don't get on till like 1:00 in the morning, 1:30 in the morning, and there's like, you know, 8 people in the place, or, you know, and so you don't really get a sense of, am I any good at this, or like, am I wasting my time? So I asked one week, the host of the show, the MC, can you get me on like when there's a crowd in here, like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and I just really want to see. So he told me when I would be on. And so I knew who I was, like the name of the comic that was coming before me. So I was like ready for it. And then he went up and I was getting ready to go up on stage. And he said, coming up next, we have a real treat for you. And I was like, wow, that's quite nuts.
Thank you. Yeah.
It turns out what I didn't know was Robin Williams had dropped in.
That's
Robin Williams, and the place goes insane. Robin goes up on stage for 45 minutes and just destroys. He was so brilliant and funny. And then after he got done, he left the club, like a huge ovation. The MC went back up and he looks back at his clipboard, his list of names, and now Mike Scully. And it was just horrible. Like, I went up and there was still a crowd, but as soon as I started talking after Robin Williams, I could hear people getting their car keys out, like they're pushing the chairs away from the table. It was torturous. I drove home that night and said, that's it. I'm gonna pursue writing.
That is so funny. And often, like, I used to work as an accountant, and I know it's not quite the same experience. And I had a really bad boss. And because he was so bad, it allowed me to leave. But if I didn't have a bad boss, then perhaps I could have still been doing accounting. So obviously Robin Williams is the funniest person, but maybe if it was someone else, you would have done it and it wasn't perhaps for you. But did you still have the stand-up bug in you, or you knew it wasn't quite right for you?
It wasn't right for me at that time, but because my jokes never came from a specific point of view, I learned that was helpful for writing TV shows, because you're writing an ensemble of characters with different points of view. So I found I was good at kind of going from character to character, and I could get their voice in my head. And then, you know, I did go back to stand up about 30 years later. I was working on a show that starred a stand-up comic named Jerrod Carmichael. This was just like about 7 or 8 years ago. And one night we were there late at night, and he was like 28 years old at the time. And he asked me if I had ever done stand-up. And I said, like 30 years ago, I did like open mic nights. And it became his mission to get me back on stage again. So I finally did it at a club. He was doing a show, like he was the headliner, but it was like Jerrod Carmichael and friends. So he could have anybody drop in and do 5 minutes or something. So I wound up doing it that night. And it was fun. I was more confident, I think, in voice. I understood more about it. But then, like, about 3 minutes in, I was trying to do it all, like have stuff in my head. But about 3 minutes in, I went blank. So I just got my phone out and I was looking at my Twitter feed and just reading jokes from my Twitter feed.
That's great, going with the punches. Because,
Yes,
there's
yeah.
nothing worse than seeing a comedian and they're just staring blankly. That's smart. And what was
Yeah.
that moment like? 30 years later, you've obviously, yeah, you tell me about it. That's pretty
No,
exciting.
I was actually glad I did it. And I mean, there was a full house in the place, because all the other, like Jerrod and all the other comics were all like, pros.
Yeah.
So the place was really packed and it went over pretty well. So it kind of felt good to kind of bookend.
Yeah. Like tick it off,
Because
or would you consider again?
I thought I did like a few little things here and there after, just like, going, but that night was just kind of fun because it kind of was a fun bookend to the last night I had done it, which was following Robin Williams
Yeah, that's a nice
and
tick.
bombing. So it was kind of a good way to wrap it up. But I
I
still
like,
enjoy writing like jokes sometimes for friends that are comics, or they need a joke for some event or like award
you
shows
did
or that.
Amy Poehler and
Yeah.
I don't know if Tina Fey as well, but you've done that as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I've gotten to write some jokes for them a few times, and I mean they're like great joke writers too. So it's always a thrill if they pick one to do.
Oh yeah, that'd be quite rewarding. Be like, that was my one, and you can see like their
Yeah,
spin on it as well. You gave me a bit. I don't know how to describe this, but a bit of a light bulb moment because a lot of people have been encouraging me to do stand up, but I was similar to you, or am similar to you, where I'd write in different voices, and that's why I
yeah.
transitioned to writing because I want to say this joke, but that's not in the voice, and that's probably why I also have transitioned to do this. Thank you for that. So anyway, so now you do the stand up at the time you with the Russian stand up comedian. You get this role. What is your life like? You're finally on this TV show. That's super exciting. What's going on at the time?
It was, I mean, it was exciting, but it was terrifying because I didn't know anything really about how like the writing staff of a TV show worked. And, you're in there with these people that have been doing it for years and they're very comfortable in the room, pitching jokes or story ideas. And I was kind of shy about speaking up, and I was kind of like, in my head a lot. And then, 7 years later, when I landed at the Simpsons, I got comfortable over the years in writers' rooms. But then when I got to the Simpsons, I kind of went right back to that mindset of, oh, these people are all geniuses and I'm an idiot. Like, because they were all like, it's an Ivy League staff. They were almost all Harvard graduates.
Yeah, crazy.
I'm like the village idiot who went to community college for half a day. So then I got very quiet again, and I started, getting in my head and kind of freaking myself. Like anything I thought of that I would have pitched on these other shows, I suddenly like at The Simpsons, I said, I can't pitch that joke here. It's too stupid for this show. And, every day would go, and I'd be driving home at night and just like telling myself, tomorrow I'm going to speak up. Tomorrow I'm going to do it. And then I wouldn't do it again. And, I told my wife, I said, we can't buy anything. We can't buy, I'm going to be fired.
Like, what changed? Because you built yourself up and you insinuated before, working a full-time job, you're buying scripts, you're learning how to write scripts, which is amazing forward-thinking mindset. Because often when you're working a full-time job, you can be too tired or you just want to go out and party or whatever. You're learning scripts, you learn it. You then have your Russian friend get you this job. You then work several jobs, you're learning. Then you come to The Simpsons. What actually helps you get out of that, fear or whatever you want to call it?
It was about like 3 months into my first year because as each day went by, you realize, you've been quiet every day. And then, so, when you finally do say something,
Yeah. Yeah.
everyone in the room is just going to kind of look over like, who the hell is that? Like,
Yeah.
because they haven't really heard my voice in the room. That's why I tell young writers, like, if, if you're, lucky enough to get a job on a show, try to establish your voice in the room kind of early. So it's not a big deal when you finally talk. Because so fortunately, when I did finally pitch a joke in the room, fortunately, it got a big laugh and it went into the script. And because had it bombed, it just would have been that much bigger of a bomb.
Yeah.
Like we waited 3 months to hear that.
Was there like pressure? Can you correct me if I'm wrong? Was there the writer's room where you write together and then a separate room where it's like ideas, or was it all the same one room?
At that time on the show, there was just one room. The showrunner who hired me, David Merkin, that's the way he liked to work, with one room. So there was, and I'm not exaggerating, there was like 19 or 20 of us in the room. So it was a big crowd in there, later on, as the show went on, we would start breaking up into two smaller rooms, occasionally even a third room. Sometimes you'd be kicking around a story idea, or we were just taking an extra pass on the script to fix a couple of jokes. So you'd be working on different scripts in different rooms. But yeah, my first couple of years on the show, it was like a big room. Like I said, there was like 20 people in there. So yeah.
No, I was just going to say, isn't that kind of good? Because, you said it took you like 3 months to like finally speak up, because there's so many people in the room. They could think you were maybe pitching more than you were, because they could maybe get you mixed up with people, or.
It's possible, but in my head, no.
Of course.
In my head, I was the only person because when I walked into the room, they were all, had been on the show for a few years,
New guy. Yeah.
Some of them had been there from day one, and I got there near the end of season 4. And I was the new guy, and I wasn't, Harvard, or, I wasn't on the Harvard Lampoon, that kind of stuff. So it was very intimidating, but it was such a tremendous relief to finally get that out and have it go in the script. And,
and did it build confidence like from then, and momentum? And
absolutely. Because there were a few other times where I had jokes in my head. There was a couple of times where I had it in my head, convinced myself it wasn't good enough, and I didn't pitch it. And then eventually somebody else pitched the same joke.
Do they look at your like laptop or your paper?
Yeah, you can't. The worst thing you can do when that happens is try to like jump in and go, "Oh yeah, I had that too." You can't. You just look like an asshole.
Oh yeah.
You just have to swallow it, and kind of like beat yourself up a little bit more, of like, just talk, just say something.
I'm sure that would have been such a relief, as you said. You say the joke, gets big laughs, and then you build up, you move forward, and then the rest is history. And we'll talk about how you get showrunner. But how did you get The Simpsons? What was that moment like? What was the call like, or how did that happen?
Somebody at Richard Sakai at Gracie Films, who produces the show, they had read my sample scripts. And at that time, I had written like 11 sample scripts.
Wow.
For various, it's a lot. And they had read, I think I had a Seinfeld, which everybody had written a Seinfeld at that point. But also I had a spec Larry Sanders Show script. And so that got read, and at that time, I think Larry Sanders hadn't been on very long yet, so there wasn't a lot of those around town.
Smart.
Whereas you'd hear from shows that they were getting sick of reading Seinfeld specs.
Yeah.
So I tried to find something fresher, and so they read that. They had me come in for a meeting with Gracie Films, and then Gracie Films sent me over to David Merkin, the showrunner, and then I met with him, and he hired me.
That's inspiring for me. I want something like that. And
Yeah.
did you watch The Simpsons at the time? Did you know what it was?
It's funny. By that point, I had watched it, but the odd thing is when the show, I used to watch the Tracy Ullman show when the Simpsons were like little 10-second cartoons going
Yeah.
out to commercial, to the ads. And I thought like those were like okay, but I wasn't like a big fan of it or anything. And then I heard that they were going to make like a half-hour version of the Simpsons.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, a half hour of that every week. Good luck with that.
That's great.
And my wife was the one who got me to watch it. She was already watching it in season 1, and she said, just try one episode, just sit down, and because I wasn't into animation.
Yes, it's a big
I
difference.
Yeah, I didn't like. I had stopped reading comic books when I was like 12 years old, and so I had no passion for animation. I just wasn't into it. So she said, just watch one episode, and it happened to be like a classic episode where Bart is going to jump over Springfield Gorge on a skateboard.
Yes,
and
yeah.
winds up doing, and it has that sequence in the middle where he's like, I'm king of the world. And then he doesn't make it. And there's just like such a brilliant series of sight gags that come up with, where he's airlifted by helicopter and they're banging his head on the gorge.
Yeah.
He's got blood all over. They put him in the ambulance. The ambulance drives like 3 feet into a tree. He rolls out the back and I was laughing so hard. To this day, I still think that sequence is the funniest thing I've ever seen on television.
Isn't that crazy? I don't think I've seen that for at least 10 years, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I've watched a lot of shows. Very long story short, when I was 13, we had to do a year project on someone who inspired us, and I did Matt Groening. And so I know all about, well, I can't really remember it now, but I got all the figurines. I learned all about his life. But the fact that we can remember an episode of The Simpsons 10, 15, 20 years later, just from a few sentences, there's no other show like that. It just blows my mind.
Yeah. So once I saw that, then I was hooked on the show.
Because you were also, I believe you got another opportunity and you had to pick between The Simpsons and the other one. And your wife was basically like, you're an idiot, pick The Simpsons. Can you, you're laughing, tell me about that.
Yeah, that's true. No, there was a show at the time called Coach. It was a live action multicam sitcom with an audience. And there was an actor on it who was Dick Van Dyke's brother. His name is Jerry Van Dyke, who, when I was a kid growing up, I loved Dick Van Dyke, but I also, on the old Dick Van Dyke show, sometimes his brother would pop into an episode, and I thought his brother was hilarious. So, yes, but long story short, I happened to get offered 2 jobs at the same time, The Simpsons and Coach, that had Jerry Van Dyke in it. And I really wanted to meet Jerry Van Dyke, and my wife wanted to just strangle me. Like, are you insane?
That's a good wife. That's someone that's keeping you on your path.
Yeah.
And then this is crazy to me. The guy that's too shy to pitch originally ends up becoming the longest showrunner at the time. How does that happen? I know you're a modest guy, but like, how did you excel? How did you get to that position? Because that's a big jump.
Yeah, it was. I had been on staff for 4 years, for 4 seasons on the show. And the showrunners, they used to do like, every showrunner used to do 2 seasons, and then they would move on because animation is very time consuming. It's a real drain, because on a live action show, you work, if you're doing like 22 episodes, you work like 9 months, but then there's like 3 months where you're not working. In animation, it never stops. It goes year round because there's always animation coming in.
Like the
that
9-month wait.
Yeah, because it takes 9 months to produce an episode of The Simpsons between the writing and the animation. So you're always working on multiple episodes at the same time that are all in different stages of production. So it is a very like time consuming, exhausting job. So I had done my 2 years, and at that point we had done 10 seasons, and I thought we used to talk about wrapping the show up then. Like we were always talking about, we got to think of a finale, like we're running out of gas.
It's so crazy to hear.
We got to think of how to wrap it up. And then when they decided to do 2 more seasons, like 11 and 12, and they asked if I would stay running it for those 2 years, I said, yeah, all right, I'll do that. And then I thought, wow, 4 seasons, I'll be the longest
Yeah.
runner on the staff. Now, I mean, the show is now in season 37, and I think Al Jean wound up running it for 14 or 15 years, and now Matt Selman has been running it for quite a few years.
Wow.
So yeah, but at the time, 4 seasons was considered a long run.
And how did you deal with the stress and pressure? Because being a showrunner, most people won't know what a showrunner is. It's not just being like in charge of the writing room. You're in charge of pretty much everything, right? So that's like potentially a very different skill set. Was that overwhelming? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but how did you cope with not just the writing aspect, but all of it?
Yeah, it's your main function is you're now like the head writer on the show,
Yep.
which is intimidating enough because now like all those Harvard graduates that I was so scared of, on my first day.
Yep.
Now they're all looking at me for guidance and like kind of like say what the plan is, and I'm supposed to judge what things are the best things to go in the script and what stories we're going to do, and you're kind of the final word on everything you do. I mean, that staff is so great. You're obviously you take in everything they're saying, and if they're all laughing at something and I'm not, I'm going to go with what they're laughing
That's
at.
a good leader. Yeah.
Like they're all smarter than me. I think I'll give that a shot, even if I didn't laugh at it the way they did. And most of the times they were right. And there were writers in there who even like knew the show better than I did. Like George Meyer and Al Jean and so you want their input. They're some of the writers who built this show from the ground up.
So that's and I've heard from many different writers and many different interviews that, you were one of their favorites, if not their favorite showrunner or leader, whatever you want to call it. And what do you think, did the managing or leadership side come naturally to you? Because it's quite rare. Sometimes when you start something new, you want to put your stamp on it, and you might want to be a bit authoritarian, or you might want to be like, no, this is the way. But it sounds like you had a very inclusive style. So where did that come from?
It came out of, I didn't want to I really wanted to know that they were on board. I mean, you're never going to get, when there's that many people in a room, there's always going to be a differing opinion or two. And I always made sure to, keep notes, because for any spot where you needed a joke, you eventually have to pick one joke. There might have been 3 or 4 great jokes that all could have been used. So I would have to pick one, but I would save the others. And later on during the process, if the joke that I picked didn't work, then I could pull, I could go back and look at what were the other jokes that we liked back then. Because, months go by. So each time you see the show at a new stage, you're kind of seeing it with fresh eyes.
Because I always wondered, because you said the 9-month animation, I wonder how attached you are during the process. Is it just you write it, then 9 months later it's animated, or you see the animation? Do you still have that same feeling, or is there a process along the way?
Now, yeah, there's periods that go by where you don't even think about that episode while the animation's being done. I mean, you record the actors, you edit together the audio track, the animators send over storyboards, and you're giving notes on storyboards. And that was the part where I really, had to learn is the animation side of it, because I'm not an artist, I'm not an animator, but now you have to give the animators direction and notes on their work and stuff like that. So that was a real process for me because they're so talented. But a lot of it was about like facial expressions and the timing of a joke and when to reveal the joke, yeah, on camera, that kind of stuff. So I had to kind of learn to speak their language, and I was lucky. I had a writer on staff who was a really talented artist too, and he really spoke their language. So sometimes he could jump in if I was struggling to articulate what I wanted, he would just say it like very succinctly in a way.
Seven, and they're like, "Oh, of course."
They would get it. So I kind of, he would. His name was Ron Hauge, and he would like help with the character designs when you have like a new character in the show, because he could kind of sketch things out, or he could look at their work very early in the process and maybe steer them, he would give them some guidance where I would have to, yeah. So that was very helpful. But, I had run a show prior, but it was kind of in obscurity. It was a show called Out of This World. It was a kids sitcom about a little girl whose father was an alien from another planet. Yep. And
that's a great premise.
You would only hear his voice. He would talk to her from the other planet. He had like, I guess,
telepathy or something
on Earth. I wasn't there when the show was created, but he had crash landed on Earth, married an Earthling, and then had to go back to his planet for some reason. And the voice of the father was Burt Reynolds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but his deal was he did not want to be credited on the show.
Well, I just wanted the money, but none of the. I've never heard that before.
I believe he was going through kind of a nasty divorce at the time. So I think he just kind of took the job, for the money. And, he would, he would come in, like a limousine would pull up. He would, right to the recording booth, he would go in and he would record the lines that you would hear coming over this device that she would talk to him on. And he would record like 8 episodes at once, bang them out. And the limousine, like he would tell the driver to keep the engine running. He wouldn't even shut the car off.
I've never heard that in my entire life.
Yeah. So I had been in charge of a writer's room before. It was a small room. There was only like 4 or 5 of us. So, but The Simpsons was this giant step up, and, a giant room, and like I said, all these Harvard people, and the show like was making billions of dollars for Rupert Murdoch.
Hilarious. Billions.
Yes. So you did not want to be the person who sank that ship.
Were there conversations with him or the team often? Like, I wonder, it was like a screaming, you better do this, you better do that, or was it pretty much?
No, he would not get involved on that level, but it was the flagship show of the network. The show was literally making him like, shitloads of money.
Yeah.
And I think, that's how Rupert likes his money, by the shitload.
By the billions.
Yeah.
Like us.
Yeah. So we would see him once in a while, like in the commissary, but never spoke to him. The first time we actually met him on the show was when we had him on as a guest star in like, it might've been season 9 or 10.
Yep.
And he came over to record his lines. And so some of the writers all came over because we had never met Rupert. And then, and in the script we had written, well, first of all, he was late getting to the recording session. So all I was the only one sitting in the actual room. The rest of the writers were behind the soundproof glass. And then, so Rupert walked in I think he was about 20 minutes late coming in, and he comes through the door and he just goes, sorry. And I said, I don't know why I got up the nerve. I said, you're lucky, pal. I was going to give you 5 more minutes. And then I was, and he just looked at me like, who the fuck are you? And it was so quiet because it's a recording booth, and I look behind me and I can see all the writers laughing, but it's soundproof, so you can't hear anything.
Yeah, so you just see them go up and down. Yeah. That would have been very rewarding.
Yeah, so then we just got to work right away, and we had written a joke in there, and we didn't know if he had read his lines ahead of time or not.
Yeah.
But where he had to come into a room. His like luxury box at the Super Bowl, he had to walk in and go, I'm Rupert Murdoch, billionaire tyrant. And I'll give him credit. He read it. I don't know if it was the first time that he had seen it, but he laughed, and he did it really funny. And so the rest of the session went really well.
That's great when someone can laugh at themselves or in that. Much respect.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was great about that. So got to give him credit.
And in terms of, and I know you've probably had a lot of you have had a lot of celebrities, and you make them do things like that. But how do you deal? We were talking about this, the pressure side, because you don't want to lose money. You still want the show to be successful. I don't know about you, but a lot of writers have tendencies to be people pleasers. But at the same time, you need to make decisions, and you need to make quick decisions. So what was kind of like, how did you get through that? Because you have to make a decision really quickly to move on.
No, it did. I mean, fortunately, at that point I had worked with a lot of these people for, a few years, and I would, try to explain my decision. Because a lot of times you're picking between several good choices.
Yeah.
And then you have to go with one. And so I would explain, like, I love this idea too, and I love that idea, and let's keep track of this. But then, by the end, you've had to make, final decisions on everything. And I'm sure there was stuff that, maybe the writer of the episode didn't care for, or maybe, there was other things in the room, but that people might have liked better. But everyone there was a great mutual respect in the room, and I never tried to run it like a dictatorship, or, sometimes I was usually the most reluctant to put in like something I pitched.
Oh, interesting.
And sometimes would, have to be cajoled a little bit. Like, no, you go with that one. But you just want, because when you're on staff on a show, it's fun to see your stuff going into the script and going into the episode.
It empowers everyone.
Yes, it empowers everyone, and particularly like if it's like a new writer on the show, you really want to get their confidence up and get them comfortable pitching in the room, so they don't waste 3 months saying nothing like I did.
I can see why people liked working with you, because it's one. Yeah, as I said, fear. Coming in this big role, fear can take the better of us. We've seen it, but to still be in alignment with what's best for the show, that's a rare. I wish we had leadership in all areas of life like that, where we can kind of put ourselves to the side. You're an inspiration in that regard. And just while this springs to mind, the show that you Out of This World, you mentioned that you created it, but you weren't part of the creation of it. Could you expand on that?
Oh, Out of This World, yeah. That was only like the second show I ever worked on. And I was not there when it was created. I worked on the show with Yakov, the What a Country show, and then that was canceled. And then I wound up writing a freelance script for this Out of This World show. They hired me on staff. And then one day the guy who was running the show, he came to the writers one day at the end of the day, and he said, listen, just between us, he came to the writers and said, listen, between us, I'm not going to be here tomorrow, I'm never coming back again. But I just wanted to say it was nice working with all of you. And he said, when the people in charge come tomorrow and they're going to come looking for me, just pretend you don't know where I am. And
Wow.
so sure enough, that's what happened. The next day he didn't come in, and somebody came in and said, have any of you seen John? And we all did a terrible job of acting. No, he's not here. Wow, gee, I hope he's okay.
That's so good.
So I wound up. They offered me the job of running the show, but I was like a junior. I was a lower level person on the staff, but they didn't give me a raise. Because I think they knew I was like super eager to learn everything. And so they figured they could save some money by having me do the job.
That's so funny. So you created this show?
No, I didn't create it.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I thought
Yeah.
you created. Oh, okay. Interesting. That's so funny. So have you ever seen that guy since that left?
No. Yeah, I think I had heard he went to New York. But I've never seen him. I've always said I'm going to look him up one of these days and see if I can find him, but I've never done it.
I'm sure he has a great story as well. And then I don't even know how to go with this because you have written many scripts on top of, Duncanville, which we talk about, Everybody Loves Raymond, Parks and Recreation, and you've got another show that's out as well. But you've written a few shows, and I want to know how you deal with the rejection and the cancellation side, because there's shows such as, Complete Savages and The Pits, shows that you invested. My biggest fear, just as to preface this, is I've got at least 10 screenplays, and my biggest fear in life is that it gets, they buy it, and then they're like, sorry, we're not going to do it. That is crushing to me. So how do you deal with that? I know you've written a lot, but help me move forward.
Well, anytime you kind of come up with an idea for a show, and if you're lucky enough to get to write a pilot for it, and my wife and I write together a lot too on original projects, and we try to tell ourselves we're not going to get emotionally attached because when we first started doing it, you get very attached. And then if the pilot doesn't get made, that's one kind of rejection, that they don't even shoot it. But if you go to series and you cast it, and now you're producing episodes and you've got this cast of actors you're really starting to like, and you feel like the show's getting better as you go along, and you have to get attached because of the amount of work it takes to do it. Yep. There's so when something gets canceled, it hurts. It just hurts. And like on a show like Complete Savages, the day we had to announce to the cast that the show was being canceled, we had like 3 more episodes we were supposed to film. And we had, it was about a father, he had 5 sons. So the cast was young, and one of the actors, I'll never forget this, we're trying to explain, that the show is being canceled and the reasons, and that we're not going to do these final 3 episodes. And one of the kids said, can we do them for free?
Oh, wow.
He was just having fun doing it. Yeah. He just, and that's when you get to realize that you have to kind of teach them. Well, this is a business, and that's not going to work for all of us.
Wow, that's crushing, because that's why I want to do this. Is the collaboration, the being with good people, the sharing in ideas. I'm sure even the writers' room, when you've just got a good team, that's just the most fun in the world.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because you're having a good time, and particularly if you think the show is working, because a lot of times the reasons shows get canceled have little to do with like the quality of the show. I mean, you can, if the show is being produced by a studio that's not owned by the network.
Yeah.
So they immediately have less of a financial interest in the show. So therefore, when they put you on the schedule, they may not give you one of the prime time slots. That happens, and so and they're not as attached to the show as you are.
I know, but I've got so many points, but I'm grateful for this. This is I wouldn't call it a rejection, but I was almost moved to LA. I got a TV developmental deal, and I was so excited.
Oh, wow.
My first screenplay, I won a writing award, and I'm ready to pack my bags. And then, very long story short, quite dodgy people, and I think they were trying to steal IP, and then they kept on lying, and you've probably heard this or had these experiences as well. And luckily, we could end it there before it started. But at the time, I was devastated. But now I'm so grateful that it didn't happen, because now at least who knows if it would have got made. I know that they would have probably have cut me off. But luckily, it got ended there. But as I said, if we made one season and, maybe they put me on the side or they didn't even include me, that would have been the worst. So sometimes ending it quickly is less painful. But I know it's a tough business.
And in the moment, it's just it's an awful feeling. But you go on to the next thing. I mean, there's a line I always use that George Meyer once said, like, about a show being canceled. I think it was actually, I think it was one of mine and Julie's shows were canceled. And I was telling George, and his response, he says, "On to the next indignity." And that's always stayed with me.
that resonates as well, because I think I've written at least 5 different shows just so, like, okay, if it does get rejected, I can do this one, I can do this one, because it keeps you creative as well. But back to the network example. Actually, there's 2 examples that spring to mind. I don't know how well you remember it. You were promised from the head executive or one of the executives that you get a certain time slot, and then they made it later and just lied to your face. So how do you deal with that? Because it's one thing to get canceled for business reasons, it's out of your control. But when someone is lying to you and you're meant to work with them, that would also be very frustrating, I would imagine.
Yes, yeah. And because, particularly, there's only a certain number of places to do business in town. So you can't, really
Tell them
kick
what you
their
think.
door down and say, "You liar."
Yep.
But you can kind of politely point out, "But you said," and then they'll give you some reason of what changed, or, a lot of times it's when you first sell an idea for a show, it's not going to be on the air for 6 months. But when you sell it, it's the kind of show they think they're looking for at the time.
Yep.
By the time your show comes on the air, they've got a whole new direction they want to take the network in, and suddenly your show doesn't fit. And there's nothing you can do about that. You're just like, well, we're stuck here.
You're a better man than me, because I think you saw a screening of the pilot with someone. This might be a different show, and they're like, "I really don't like this show," and you're like, "Well," and then you try to explain, like, "Well, actually," and I'm like, how would I deal in that moment? You finally got the show out, and the executives bagging it, because I think there was a change of executives, so they weren't really attached to it because it was done from the other person. But in that moment, when an executive's bagging your show to your face, tell me what goes on there. I don't know how you deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened a few times. There was one time, it was the night before we were going to shoot the pilot, and we had a rehearsal in front of all the network executives, including the president of the network, who had been very enthusiastic when the show was being sold and cast. And he came over and he watched the rehearsal, and he goes, "I don't know how else to say this, but I just don't like it." He's like,
"That's brutal.
I don't like the characters. I don't care about their problems, and we're going to shoot it the next night." So,
So does it go ahead, or?
Yeah, we did it, and it actually. And then he walked out of the room. He just left. He's like, "I'm not going to waste your time giving you a bunch of notes," and he just didn't like it. And we shot it the next night in front of the audience, and the audience loved it. And he was there. So I will give him credit. He did say, well, shows what I know.
Oh, that's also rare. You hear a
Yeah.
lot of executives, they
Yeah.
want to put their stamp on it. That's pretty cool. And then
Yeah.
how do you deal with the uncertainty? Because there's not that many writing roles in the scheme of things. You know, a lot of the time staff's full, or, you know, you might create a show, you think it's going to go a few seasons and end. You have 5 daughters and a wife and a life. You've worked like the most I've seen, as I've said, and you have a career that I would love. But there's no way every day since you started you are working. There would be moments of massive uncertainty or when you're going to work next. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean that does happen on occasion, and there was one stretch early in my career where like 6 months went by and there was just nothing happening, and I was just trying to like sell jokes again, like $25 a joke
Oh,
kind of a
nice.
thing. And,
Yeah.
but yeah, you just you kind of ride those things out, and there's a big change in the business right now. The last couple of years, between COVID and the streamers coming into the business, the whole business model has changed,
Yeah.
and the networks are ordering less shows, or the streamers. Like a network season of a show would be like 22 episodes or 24 episodes. Netflix comes in and suddenly a season is 8 episodes, maybe 10,
Yeah.
sometimes 6. And they call that a season. And so it's become harder for writers now to put together a full season of work because
Yeah.
the networks are now doing shorter orders also. And if you're only doing 8 episodes of a show, now the staff is smaller. So
Yeah.
it's like dominoes. It affects every department of the show, and so everyone's kind of still adjusting to that now. Right now, there's probably more writers out of work than there's been like the entire all the years I've been out here. Uh,
Wow.
so it's a big adjustment, and the business is now kind of run by on the corporate side. The networks and studios used to be a lot run by people who were passionate about television and movies and entertainment. But now a lot of these companies have been swallowed up by other companies, and it's the tech
Yeah.
industry with the streamers, and it's all about the data and the number of minutes watched, and they don't necessarily have that same passion, where they grew up just like loving TV and watching the credits on shows, even as a kid. I remember watching credits and learning names of
Yeah.
people, even though I didn't really understand all their jobs, you know. So they don't get attached to things, or they do the 8 episodes and then they don't tell you if there's going to be another season for a year.
I know, and I've heard so many people say that sometimes the model is they just want the one season. They get people to watch the show with no intention, no matter, the
Yeah.
show could be doing pretty well, but they're like, nah, not worth it for us. So how do you remain creative during, the stress, the pressure, the climate, even just the rejection? Like, do you have any skills or tools, or do you go for walks? I know you used to go bowling. How do you stay creative during all of this?
Um, yeah, a lot of times, like you maybe like go on vacation with the family or something, and you just tell yourself, I'm just gonna, we're just gonna forget about work. And a lot of times that's when you get an idea for something, is when
Uh,
you're not like banging your head against the wall trying to think of something.
yeah.
You're like so relaxed and not thinking about it, and then suddenly something just pops in your head. It's happened with my wife and I a million times. Like we swore we weren't going to think about work at all, and then I don't know if it's because your mind is now suddenly just open to to anything and you're not trying, that's when sometimes you think of something, like
Yeah.
it's a very common thing too, where like people will say you got an idea, while you were, in the shower or, like not thinking about stuff suddenly. So you just kind of, you know, try to, I mean, there are days where you're actively trying, but those usually aren't the best ideas because you're sometimes forcing it,
Yeah.
you
You know
know?
what's really interesting with me is that whenever, how do I move forward in the scene, or how do, you have all these like blocks and you're not sure how to move forward. I've been getting them through meditation. I don't know if you meditate, and I've written at least
Um,
3 scripts through meditation, but
oh,
not,
wow.
and I've just closed my eyes, I'm not even thinking about anything. And I'm like, oh my God. I think it's great. We'll see. But regardless, it's just when I've completely let go. And that's actually how I've done a lot of my writing now. But it's a hard thing to get to. It happens occasionally. But that's
Yeah,
like,
wow, that's interesting. Yeah, no, I've never meditated, but I think it's like kind of whatever works for you, like you could be, shopping for grocery, food at the
exactly.
store or
Yeah.
something, and then like something just a thought crosses your mind. The thing is that you got to remember, for me anyway, is like remembering stuff like later on, like, because you think like if you have a great idea, you'll always remember it, and it's amazing how many times you forget
I
it.
I I have different notes on my phone, and I've got like,
Yeah.
I haven't written them whatsoever. And I'm like, what was that great movie idea? And I couldn't remember it. So now I write it down. And although I haven't written anything with it, I still have like untested like scripts to write, and I just go back to that because I know.
Yeah.
And I've got like, probably now it's 80 to 100 pages worth of like jokes for different like screenplays that didn't quite fit there. So I've just got all this information. If I don't write it, I wouldn't remember even like one of them, which is, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy in that regard. Oh, actually, I want to talk about Duncanville. So this is a show that you created as well. How rewarding is it when, we've spoken about all the rejection and the cancellation, but how rewarding is it when you actually get a few seasons of a show that you've created?
Yeah, it's funny with Duncanville, and that was a show like Julie and I created with Amy Poehler, and the show was so much fun. Like the cast was, I mean, Amy and Ty Burrell from Modern Family, and Rashida Jones from Parks, and
Okay.
um, Zach Cherry from Severance. I mean, that's what he's doing now.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, just a great bunch of people, Betsy Sidaro, and we were having so much fun. And we did 3 seasons of 13 episodes each. And the reason it was canceled when we pitched the show, we pitched it to Fox for the Fox network and doing the show through the studio 20th Century Fox. And it was going to be 2 studios combining because Amy was on a deal with Universal Studios and I was at 20th. So it was going to be a co-production of 2 studios, which sometimes studios don't like. They want to own the whole thing,
Yeah.
but they were willing to do it for this. Well, after we sold the show and we started, writing and production started, that's when Disney bought
Oh.
20th.
Oh.
So now suddenly Disney owns 20th. 20th is no longer connected to the Fox network. They're owned by Disney. So then the Fox network decides to start their own studio called Fox Entertainment.
Oh my
So,
God.
and then they want to own part of the show. So now we have 3 studios involved, and it just became a financial thing. And they, Fox just kind of lost interest on the business part of the show. And I was trying to convince them, yeah, but if you each own a third, then you each have to put up less money.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get the home run, but there's low risk, low reward, but it's not costing you as much. And I couldn't convince them, I on that.
Oh.
When the show was canceled, it'll show you how the mindset of the business has changed because of streaming. Um, we had done 39 episodes. So like from our point of view, the show failed, but writers were now starting to think of like the streaming model for shows like Netflix, like 39, that's fantastic. And I'm like, no, it's not, like, it would have been fantastic if we got to do 100,
It's so like the writer in me is like, you got 39, but I understand, you're on The Simpsons, Everybody Loves Raymond, Parks and Rec,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. What a shift. And it's still, that's pretty exciting to have it. And how did you recover after that? Did you go on another holiday or you just move on to the next one?
I'm sure we went. It was actually we did the show during COVID.
Oh, wow.
Now that I think about it, yeah. So so that's when we learned how to like produce a show by Zoom and run a Zoom writers room and screen and do all the post production. Everything was done over Zoom.
Wow.
So we learned how to do that. But I'm trying to remember what I did after Duncanville. God, I'm just trying to blank now. I think did I write an episode? I think I might have written a freelance Simpsons and
Because
picking out.
you left The Simpsons at that stage to then do all these other, why'd you leave The Simpsons? I know you're back as a consulting writer,
Yeah,
I
well,
thought it's called.
they now have eliminated the consulting jobs on the show. The show has like budget wise, um, they've reduced the number of episodes that they're doing per year, and so like the people who would come in, there was like myself and a few other consultants who would come in one day a week
Yep.
and help out. Those jobs are gone now, but
Oh no, you painted a
it's
grim picture for the. I'm scared.
but it's fun. I mean, I enjoy consulting on shows. It's kind of fun to come in like to the writer's room. You come in with like fresh eyes on whatever they're working on that week. So that can be fun, and it can be good for the other writers too. Like you come in and that because I always enjoyed it, running The Simpsons. Like Mike Reese would come in one day a week, and he would have fresh reaction to something we were working on, and David Merkin would come in, or like Oakley and Weinstein. So you get fresh ideas from them and their reactions to things, which it kind of gives something new life that you've been working on for a while.
It would also be good, sorry for interjecting, given your style of empowerment as well, and you're an OG, you know The Simpsons really well. It's a way to kind of build up the script even more because you actually understand from the ins and outs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's a job. Some writer, not on The Simpsons, but sometimes the consultant jobs, the studio might question, do we get our money's worth? 'Cause sometimes people might not take I always took the job very seriously. I would ask the night before, what are we working on tomorrow? Can you send it to me so I can read it first? And, so I can come in prepared to pitch on it, or let me know if it's a story. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's about so I can come in with some thoughts? So I like whoever it is I'm consulting for to feel like they're getting their money's worth for that day I'm there.
I can see why you've been doing this for a very long time. Not everyone is wired like that, so that's a great skill.
Well, I look at it as the showrunner. I know what I would want from somebody coming in one day. What I'm hoping to get. So yeah, I take it seriously, and it's also you want to contribute. You want to get stuff, and that part of it kind of never goes away. And it shouldn't. I mean, if it does go away for you, you should stop doing it.
I love that.
It should always be a kick if you pitch a joke and the room laughs and it goes into the script. It should always be fun in that regard. Or if you help solve a problem, because sometimes you're working on something and you spend all day on it, you don't quite nail it. So if I have a thought like later that night or the next day on what we were working, I'll just email it to the showrunner.
Oh, that's great.
Like, yeah, oh, maybe something like this, so, because it's not doing me any good to have it in my head and not do anything with it. So you might as well try and help.
I love that enthusiasm, and that like in my ideal like writing world, that's what you want. You just want people to be like happy and excited and to laugh, and
Yeah.
you're living the dream. I reckon what we'll do now to wrap up the podcast is to do a quick rapid fire segment. So the
Okay,
first
sure.
thing that springs to mind, but you can take your time to think
Rapid
about
fire. All right, I should sit up for rapid fire, I guess.
it.
You're gonna improve my posture here.
I've got so many questions, so we will do this very quickly. Favorite person to collaborate with?
Oh, my wife, Julie.
Great answer. I'll send this to her as well. Just give me her email. Most talented voiceover artist you've worked with, or your favorites?
Oh, wow. There's so many great ones. The Simpsons cast is so strong. I mean, they just blow me away. Like Dan Castellaneta, and they're nice people too, which makes it fun. But Dan is a consultant on the show, and he's still doing it. He'll come in. He started doing it later, and he comes in one day a week, and he takes the job very seriously. And it's a kick to have him in there, and he pitches a lot of funny stuff too. He's just like, they're all very nice people on the cast. I mean, some of them just surprise me with what they're capable of doing. Like the fact that like Dan, or like Hank or Harry, I mean, they do so many characters, and they can go seamlessly, like from one to the other, like with Homer and Grandpa talking to each other, and they can do it in real time during like when you're reading the script.
Yeah.
So you really hear what it's going to sound like. Or Harry Shearer does it with Burns and Smithers.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, when they record the lines, they do each character. They just do one side of the scene. They don't switch voices when they're recording it. But when you're reading the script, they do it in real time. So that's a kick. And sometimes you just put a voice. You would just assign a voice to somebody hoping they'll do something funny with it. You don't know what they'll come up with. Like, a character like Jailbird on The Simpsons, which is done by Hank Azaria. I wasn't there the first time he did it, but they never envisioned that kind of surfer like voice. They thought it was going to be more of a criminal, typical, like kind of a cliche criminal voice, like a gangster voice or something, old, old movie gang. And he just apparently did this surfer voice at the table. And it was so unexpected, they just loved it. And that's always been the voice. So, it's like Dan Castellaneta came up with, Homer's saying like, "Don't."
Oh, he did.
That was invented by Dan at a table read. In the script, it just said Homer, and then in parentheses under his name, where the dialogue would be, it said annoyed grunt. And Dan came up with the sound. There's an actor from like the old the Laurel and Hardy shorts, the Laurel and Hardy short films. There was an actor who was always irritated with Laurel and Hardy. His name was James Finlayson, and he has a big, like, full mustache. And he would get mad at Laurel and Hardy, whatever they were doing, and he would go like, "Do." It was very long. Dan clipped that sound just to "do," and to this day, like here we are, whatever, 37 years later, in the script, whenever Homer says "do," it says annoyed grunt. It doesn't say "do."
That's so great. This one you might have to blink because I don't want you to get into trouble. How do the Simpsons predict the future? Do you work with the CIA or the government? Blink twice if you do.
Yeah. No, we just do a ton of drugs and
ayahuasca or shrooms?
Yeah. No, it's, obviously they're just we're not trying to predict something. It's just, the one we get asked about the most is the one of, Trump being elected president.
Yeah.
But at the time, we were just looking for a joke. It's a fantasy sequence where Lisa's the president. And so we thought, well, there's an opportunity for a free joke of like the mess that she's inheriting from the previous president. So they, all right, so we'll pitch on who was the president before her. And different names were being thrown out. I don't recall. And we went through a lot of names. And then somebody pitched Trump's name. And he had pitched, Trump had floated the idea in the late 90s of maybe someday I'll run for president. I think at that time he was like an independent or a Democrat. He was not a Republican.
Interesting.
And so it just seemed like, yeah, that would be like, basically who would be, like Mike Reese says, who would be the stupidest person America could elect?
Hilarious.
And that, so that went into the script back in whatever, 1999, I think. And then, in 2016, suddenly he's the president.
You guys predicted it all. I've seen like a clip of all the things you guys have predicted. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And some of them now, people are like making things up and photoshopping things on the internet that didn't even happen, like that were never said on the show. So
that makes a lot of sense. What's been your special ingredient to work all these years?
It's kind of like, my advice always to writers is like for having a long career, it's very simple. It's really, don't be an asshole. When you're in the room, it's like simple stuff, like be respectful of other people's pitches and opinions and feelings, and that's so it's not, don't talk over people, don't shout people down, don't shit on people's ideas. We're all trying to accomplish the same thing. We're all trying to make the show better, and be fun to work with. And yeah, if you're in charge, make it as collaborative as you can, and try to let people go home or at a reasonable hour when they can see their family.
That's a great one. What are you most proud of?
Oh God, I guess the fact that I'm still working, and but having a reputation of just being a decent person. I mean, there's a lot of I've worked with tons of really nice people. I've been very lucky. It's always like if you hear complaints about somebody, it's like the exception to the rule. There's a lot more nice people in show business than not nice people. Yep. That's why you hear about the assholes, because it's boring to talk about people that are nice.
Yeah, that's good take. What's your next big dream or goal?
It's fun. I am, thinking now about like what's next to do. Like, obviously trying to think of other like show ideas, but occasionally, outside of the Simpsons movie, I've never written a movie, and that was a much more collaborative thing. And it's one of my regrets, but it's like, well, if I have an idea, and I do have a couple ideas that feel more like movies than TV shows. Cool. But it's sitting down and doing it, Yep. So that's why I admire, like you said, you've written 5 screenplays.
More.
Oh, well, yeah. Screenplays are so hard.
I know. Yeah. Well, it's coming from you. It's probably been a part of like over 1,000, so it blows my.
Well, you're talking TV screenplays or movie screenplays?
Oh, I'm writing my second movie. I've written one movie, but most of TV.
Yeah, movies are a lot of work, man. It's a long process, and then like worse than that, like a novel. I can't even imagine writing a novel.
I think that you would have on top of the novel side, writing a book about your life. You've got a very interesting life, what you've learned from different people, your different experiences. We didn't even cover Everybody Loves Raymond, Parks and Rec, and that could be a book in itself. Like, you've lived a very interesting life.
Yeah, those shows were a lot of fun to be part of. Well, if you want, we can talk a little while longer, and I'll tell you some very quick stories
Yeah,
about those shows.
is that okay with you?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
If
Yes.
give yourself an edit spot if you want.
Well, can I just start with one of them and then I'll let you talk whatever.
Sure.
With Everybody Loves Raymond, just for context, you get a call from Phil Rosenthal and says, "Do you want to do the show?" And he said, "I really need to know if you like this show, if you want to be a part of the show," because you were, and I've never heard about this before, but you were typecast as being the animation guy, which you only hear about actors, and that's blown my mind. Anyway, the rest is all yours. I'll leave it in your hands.
Yes, no, that's true. Like Phil called me, and I was a huge fan of the show, just as a watcher of the show. And Phil called and said, "I want to he goes, I'd love to have you come over here, but he goes, I really need to know if we offer the job that you're going to take it, because to be honest, I'm going to have to fight for you."
Yeah, wow.
And I asked him, "Really, why?" He goes, "Well, I brought your name up to the network." Yeah, and they said, "Isn't he Cartoon Boy?"
Cartoon Boy, that's
Yeah, so that was me learning that, writers can be typecast the same way actors can.
wow.
So I told him, absolutely, I'll, if you fight for me, I'll be there. I still was doing my 1 day a week consulting on Simpsons, and he let me keep doing that. So I was very lucky on Raymond, because I love the show, and that staff was terrific. And Ray, the cast was great. Ray was in the room a lot, because he really took it very seriously. He's one of those like great comics where he'll know, like, he can tell like a great joke versus a great joke for him as a stand-up. He'll like, and it was, very interesting, but he took the process very seriously. But when I got there, it was like season 7. So it was a well-oiled machine at that point. But it was a lot of fun to do and be a part of. I'm very proud of it. And it was the same too on Parks. Like Amy Poehler came from SNL, and she hadn't done sitcom. Yeah, I think she had done a couple of pilots that she was in, but this was a show built around her. And she really wanted to learn the process and took it very seriously. So whenever if she couldn't be on set, she would come up to the writer's room. And she wrote some episodes. Then she started directing episodes.
Oh, wow.
She wanted to learn every facet of it, so she could really understand the process. And I love when, an actor wants to do that, because then they really start to understand it from the other side, and learning the structure of a script and why things are done a certain way, or why something might have changed in a script. You learn that when you're just sitting in the room and really getting into the process. So, but both those shows were a lot of fun to be a part of. And like Parks was one of those shows, like Mike Schur is a great showrunner, and I learned a lot from him. Even you're always learning, even though you've already done shows, you constantly learn from good people. So and the room was fun, or sometimes you'd be the on-set writer while they're filming.
Oh, that'd be a lot of fun.
If a joke doesn't work or something, you can come in with another joke, or the actor might come over and say, that doesn't feel like it's working, does it? And they're right. They can tell when a joke's just not happening. So you'll try and come up with something new on the set and give the showrunner a choice in editing. So they'll have the scripted version, but they'll also have an alternate version just in case they want to switch the jokes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing those stories. I appreciate it. We'll have to do a part 2 sometime in the future, because you're living my greatest life. So thank you for living a great life, showing people how to live a great life. Anything else?
I'm very lucky.
You earned it. But anything else you want to say before I ask the final question? Any stories that spring to mind? Are you happy to leave it there?
God, God, I mean, I've failed so many times. I can't, I don't know. Nothing's springing to mind. Go ahead. If there's a question you wanted to ask that you didn't, like, feel free.
I have too many, so they'll just derail them.
Okay.
Actually, well, before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you, this is actually the same question. Is there a question I should have asked you? Anything where you want to tie up or springs to mind, or you're happy?
Um, I think I'm happy. I'm sure, like, as soon as we sign off,
I
I'll
know,
think
it's
of
always
like five other things.
cool. I've written, I don't know if you've seen, I've never written so many notes in my life. I've really enjoyed this. Before we
Okay,
go,
no, it was fun. Uh-huh.
thank you. And before we go, how can people follow you? Are you on social media? How do you want people to keep up to date with you? Anything you want
Yeah,
to?
I used to be very active on Twitter before it kind of turned into the, political cesspool that it is now. So I'm on there, but I don't really post much anymore. I'm on Instagram, but haven't really gotten into it. So no, but there was a time I used to, put a lot of jokes up on Twitter. I
I
used to come
saw them.
home.
Great.
It
Yeah.
was crazy. I used to come home from working on a show, and it would be like late at night or something. And then I would go, "Oh, wait, shit! I didn't write my free jokes for America today." And it became like this obligation.
Yeah.
But it was fun because a lot of like writers I was fans of or friends with, and a lot of comics, were all on it, and it was a great site to go to before Elon Musk kind of messed it up.
Do
But
you, do you know what your handles are? Because I looked at your Twitter. I haven't seen your Instagram. Do you know what they are? If not, I'll find it and I'll put it in the episode notes.
I don't even know what my my Instagram handle is. You can find it, but I literally have posted nothing on Instagram. So it's kind of a waste now unless I figure out a way to use it.
Yep.
That's fun.
Yep. Fair. Awesome. Thank you so much. I love your enthusiasm. You're a very inspiring and empowering guy. And yeah, I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Oh, great! My pleasure. I enjoyed doing it.
I love how Mike talks about how he was initially scared to speak up in the Simpsons writing room, but he eventually mustered the strength to express his ideas. He gave us a great example where he had a great joke in mind, but he wasn't able to express it, and then someone else pitched the same joke and it was received well with a laugh. I love this story because it reminds us all that success often lies just beyond the edge of our fears. Often we stay silent, holding back our ideas out of fear of rejection, humiliation, or simply falling short. It's a great lesson for all of us because when we try to protect ourselves from failure and or fear, we also block ourselves from possible success. So I'll leave you with this epic quote. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Nelson Mandela. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.